Hi, my name is Daniel from JP Equity Partners here in Perth. I'd like to welcome you all and thanks for joining today. It's been an exciting time for PharmAust recently with the announcement of the MPL trial achieving successful anti-cancer outcome. And the company has recently announced preliminary positive results for the treatment COVID-19 infection by Monepantel. Today on the panel, we have Executive Chairman Dr. Roger Aston, Chief Scientific Officer Richard Mollard, and Epicam CEO Colin Lagalia. Just a heads up on the format today. We'll have a presentation shortly, and then at the end we'll run through a Q&A, so please send through any questions you may have. I'll just pass over to Roger now to begin the presentation, and thanks again for joining.
All right, hello and welcome to everyone. Thank you for attending the JP Equities presentation on PharmAust. JP have advised me that there are about 100 shareholders online, which is great news. Thank you for attending. I should also add that the PowerPoint presentation has been posted on the ASX if anyone wishes to download it. Also, in terms of process, I'm going to go through the presentation fairly quickly, as I understand we've had a lot of questions and would like to try to deal with the questions. Those are important for shareholders to get some clarity as to next steps and so on. So I've got 4 objectives during this presentation. 1, to highlight the strategy and programs and inform you of next steps. 2, to focus on the importance of the last 2 announcements, namely the cancer trial in canines, and secondly, MPL as an anti-COVID-19 product. Thirdly, I'd like to involve the participation of my colleagues, Richard Mollard, who's CSO of PharmAust and CEO of Pitney, as well as Colin Lagalia, the CEO of Epicam. So you can hear firsthand their perspectives on the science and on Epicam business respectively. And finally, of course, is getting to the questions from shareholders is very important. If we can go to slide 1, please. Let's see if this is all going to work. Oh, we're already on slide 1. Thank you. So this highlights the corporate structure. I know many shareholders have seen this, but we may have newcomers to the register, so we're just going to touch on some of the history as well in the beginning. But we've got Pitney there, which is focused on repurposing a registered veterinary drug. So we're basically a Monepantel or MPL company looking for applications of this novel drug, which has been registered, of course, for veterinary use already by VetMajor. Let me remind you that VetMajor is the company that we have an option agreement with, and we'll touch on this as we go through. Secondly, of course, we have Epicam there as a trading business, and this should achieve $3.46 odd million of sales this coming financial year. And you'll hear a bit more about this from Colin as we push through. I see we're on slide 2, which is good. This shows some of the current metrics for PharmAust. The company has just over 300 million shares on issue, and at a share price of 11 cents, I think that gives us a market cap of about 35 million. We also have about 2.9 million in cash at the bank as of May this year, so we're well funded for our current programs this year. It might also be worth pointing out on the trading curve that we've recently seen some high turnover with the 2 announcements. So quite a few shareholders have taken the opportunity to exit the stock, which of course also means quite a few shareholders have come in to the stock who may otherwise have not been in PharmAust. So I'm going to go on to slide 3, please. Thank you. This is a summary slide that highlights our strategy at a high level. MPL or Monepantel, which belongs to VetMajor, begins to come off patent in the next year or so. We have an option agreement with VetMajor, and they're aware of our business activities. Furthermore, PharmAust has patent families directed to the use of MPL in a number of diseases, including cancer. And we'll go into this in a bit more detail. As a business, we have identified that MPL interacts with mTOR, and by way of background, mTOR stands for mechanistic target of rapamycin and is a central regulator of metabolism, cell growth, and development. Apart from being clinically and commercially attractive, the other mTOR inhibitors owned by Novartis and Pfizer currently have sales over $2 billion US. So mTOR regulators are unquestionably important molecules. The key difference between MPL and the other mTOR inhibitors is the diminished immunosuppression observed with Monepantel, which we think is a great asset for cancer therapy for obvious reasons. Again, I'll touch on this a little bit later. Of course, Monepantel is being repurposed by PharmAust as it's already registered for the treatment of veterinary parasitic infections by Vet Major. Furthermore, the fact that Monepantel is already approved for veterinary applications means it has gone through regulators for compliance, manufacturing, chemistry, and toxicology. So this is not a new molecule in a regulatory sense. As such, the first target we have chosen for commercialization is the treatment of veterinary cancers. And another attraction for pursuing canine cancers is the fact that what happens in dogs often happens in humans. In other words, a successful canine cancer trial gives much support and confidence for pursuing further human cancer trials, which offer much, much bigger target market. The target market, of course, for humans is over $50 billion US a year. As you'll see on the next slide, because mTOR is such a central molecule in mammalian metabolism, we've also looked at COVID-19, which I think we've got some pretty exciting results, which are currently being confirmed. Again, Richard Mollard will talk to that in a moment. I might add that also Epichem does not only generate cash for the group, but it also has an involvement in the formulation and dispatch of MPL to the clinical sites, and it's been a valuable asset to us to be able to do that within Australia. As I mentioned on the previous slide, mTOR is a very central metabolic regulator in cells. It regulates two pathways called mTORC1 and mTORC2. These pathways affect just about everything that's required to make a cell grow and replicate. Clearly, this may be of particular importance in tumor cell growth, where the cells are replicating uncontrollably. And of course, in viral disease, where the virus takes over the metabolic machinery of the cell for its own replication purposes. So we think our molecule is going to be vitally important in diseases where cells are replicating quickly, or where you want to put the cell into a stationary non-replicating stage to prevent a virus from harnessing or taking over the metabolic machinery and replicating. Just on the lighter side, the bunch of colored spaghetti in the center of the slide that looks like the work of Jackson Pollock is a 3D representation of the mTOR molecule, highlighting its structural and binding domains in color. It obviously is a significant molecule and fundamental molecule in mammalian metabolism. So rather than dig too deeply into the importance and science of mTOR, please have a look at the link that's provided on this slide. This coincidentally came out just in the last couple of days, and it's some excellent research undertaken by the Garvan Institute in Sydney, which we're familiar with. Slide 5, please. This one is pretty self-explanatory, basically highlighting the key metrics of the recent canine trial undertaken by the company. What have we actually done? Well, we've had 100% survival in our trial with dogs. Typically, 50% of untreated dogs would not survive for the 28 days. We had one dog which showed remarkable and highly significant 60% regression of all of its tumors, with one tumor completely disappearing within 14 days. This does not happen by accident. This is an effect of the drug. A further 5 canines showed stable disease, and typically in lymphoma, which is quite an aggressive disease in canines, you would have seen fairly aggressive tumor growth. Canine patients were generally in good spirits, and why is that important? Do we care that the dogs are in good spirits? Well, certainly the owners do care, and they pay a premium for a drug that's not going to leave the dog in bad shape or sick or in pain. So we're very pleased with the clinical features and outcomes with MPL in this trial. And finally, the dogs were dosed orally by their owners at home, which is a great benefit. You cannot do that with chemotherapy. Chemotherapy has to be administered by the vet. So we have, I think, a good outcome for this trial. Of course, Vet Major has supported the phase 2 trial by providing 25 kilos and some general advice through their own oncologists. And we've developed and formulated MPL into a palatable high-release tablet suitable for canines and humans. We may have to reformulate higher doses for humans, but that remains to be seen. Vet Major will now review the trial data in relation to the next steps with regard to the option agreement. And we've had a lot of questions on when is that going to happen? And I can report today that we expect to have the dossier in advanced form by the end of June. And this is required by Vet Major at least a week before they have a meeting with the veterinary specialists, both from our side and from Vet Major's side. So imminently, we hope to have some preliminary feedback on how Vet Major is going to proceed. So what does this all mean for the shareholder? Well, if I put my own shareholder hat on, based on the data so far, we have a drug which appears to be very good in the treatment of canine cancers. It's a big market for veterinary companies, and it's an attractive market for veterinary companies in terms of it's an ongoing treatment during the course of the final life of the dog. And I should just add that, again, we're benefiting or piggybacking on the extensive toxicology and existing dossiers with regulators around the world to accelerate the processes of Monepantel for cancer. The final bullet point on this slide highlights the preliminary clinical trials of MPL in COVID-19 infection. And we've shown a significant reduction in infectivity in culture. And this provides us with another iron in the fire and a shot at goal. Richard will talk to this later, but it is being confirmed as we speak. And we're pretty excited about this outcome. More to come on this. Slide 6, please. This schematically highlights what I've just said on the previous slide and points to the advantages of pursuing Monepantel. In summary, we've already got GMP compliant manufacturing, and we've got a formulated tablet which releases the drug at high doses. And we're already piggybacking on the toxicology safety already with regulators. And every system that we've studied MPL in cell culture with human cells, in mice with human cells, in canines, and in man, we have shown either stable disease or tumor regression. So the next steps will now include presenting these results to the Vet Major with the view of having some feedback of where we're going with them. Slide 7 are the commercial catalysts, which again are pretty obvious, so I'll quickly skim through this slide. We're repurposing an approved veterinary drug for another veterinary indication. And our veterinary indication is in dogs, which are not in the food chain, unlike the preliminary filing by Vet Major for parasitic infections in sheep, which do go on to the food chain. So we should have no safety in developing and registering the drug with big pharma, with Vet Major. Our patents for use of MPL in cancer and other diseases go out for between 15 and 20 years. So we've got plenty of runway, commercial runway. The partners' composition patents start to expire in 21, 22. We're ready for phase 3 in canines. The vets which we have been working with felt that it was time now to close this trial with the number of dogs that we used and prepare ourselves for phase 3. So we assume they are positive on the outcome of our work. We do have some dose optimization for a pivotal registration trial in canines, and this will probably occur during the option period. So apart from successes in cancer, COVID-19 may also offer a further shot at goal. So we think we're we're pretty tidily placed at the moment. Slide 8, please. This slide is a summary of our patents, and we've had a few shareholders ask us how do our patents give an edge, and this is important at the moment because we're coming to a stage where potentially we're going to develop and start selling product over the next year or two. As such, we need to have patents which are going to give us the protection that we want. So we've basically got a family of 5 patents at the moment, or 5 families. The first one is the use of Monepantel and its analogues, which are called aminosatonitriles in cancer. So we've got a large range of molecules claimed for treating cancers in man and animals. Since we know the mechanism and evaluated the mechanism of Monepantel, we've also got a patent on the use of Monepantel and its analogues, its aminoacetonitril homologues. So we're claiming basically here that we can treat any mTOR pathway with these drugs. So if something comes up that a disease that we hadn't thought of, but it happens to be mediated through the mTOR pathway, then we would have a position there with our patent. Of course, the next bullet point, combinations, is all about using MPL or Monepantel with existing cancer drugs. We are going to be putting this on the backdrop of hundreds of anti-cancer drugs in hundreds of different cancers as we move forward. So this is really quite an important application where we can claim the use of MPL with other drugs. We also have about 50 MPL-like molecules that we've developed over the years, which are also patented on the 4th bullet point. And we've also just filed and announced to the market that we've extended our IP into the antiviral area for COVID-19. And that was before any disclosure, so we should be okay there. Can we go to slide 9, please, which is the option agreement. This is the option agreement with Vet Major, which I should just emphasize the key aspects of it. Firstly, it's an exclusive worldwide royalty-bearing license to commercialize MPL, their product, for the treatment of cancer in animals. Vet Major's option period ends 6 months after the receipt of the final report on the recent trial. And we're currently waiting for all the reports from the vets around Australia who have undertaken the recent trial. Upon option exercise, the parties enter into a negotiation period not lasting more than 6 months to agree the terms of the license, including commercial payments to PharmAust. Should Vet Major not proceed, and this is always a risk, I should emphasize that, but should Vet Major not proceed to exercise the option, PharmAust will be free to seek alternative commercialization partners. A licensing deal typically will involve 3 aspects. The first one is upfront cash payment in recognition of our investment. Secondly, milestones. As they meet regulatory milestones and registration, we get a bonus payment. And thirdly, of course, the royalty. And we can juggle these 3 rewards, shall we say, in different ways. You can reduce the upfront payment if the company wishes to pay less upfront, but you correspondingly increase the royalty, and that will give you bigger benefit for longer periods. So we can discuss that more on the questions. I know there's been a few questions on that. So what does it all mean? Well, of course, if Vet Major proceed, as we hope they will, transformational outcome for PharmAust, and it would allow us then to focus much more on COVID-19 and human cancers, whilst the partner takes over the running for Monepantel in canine cancers. So if I can invite Richard Mollard to take up slide 10, I think we're on next. Richard.
Thank you, Roger. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining today. This slide just summarises our recent work testing the effects of Monepantel upon the COVID-19 infections. So as a bit of an introduction, there are kind of 2 ways of tackling COVID-19. One would be create a vaccine where your body creates an immunity to prevent the virus taking a hold. And another is to create an antiviral, which is a tablet you might take to stop the virus replicating once it's in your body. This is a bit like the product on the market at the moment, remdesivir, which is doing quite well with sales, with the expectation of reducing the average time on a respiratory apparatus from 14 days to 11 days. So Monepantel, we're looking to position in that sort of framework. In the middle, you can see the top graph there. We're looking at virus replication. So you can see MPL, that's Monepantel, and we can see that the virus is significantly reduced in terms of following infection of cells in culture and treatment with Monepantel. The amount of RNA or the virus replicating machinery is reduced. Then you can see in the second panel down, the two graphs with the two arrows on it. On the left, you have Monepantel, and on the right, you have Monepantel sulfone. So here we have, with our collaborator or our outsourced organisation, the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute in Melbourne, taken cells in culture, infected them with coronavirus, and then treated them with Monepantel. Here we're looking at secondary infections. So take the tissue culture media, infect cells again, and see if this virus is able to undertake a secondary infection. This scale on the left is a log scale. So you can see 5 or 6, 5, 4, and 3. 5 would be 100,000 virus particles, and 4 would be 10,000. So you can see where it says 0.064, Monepantel has inhibited infectivity by 90% from 100,000 to 10,000 particles in the cell culture. On the right, we have Monepantel sulfone, and this is a log scale again, and you can see that there's a 30% reduction in infectivity. So this data is very good preliminary data, and we're just replicating this at the moment. And we have the data in, and it looks very good, but we're still finalizing analysis. But it shows that Monepantel can reduce the virus replicating, and it can also reduce the secondary infections from the virus within the cells and throughout the cells. Okay, thank you, Roger.
I've got to unmute, sorry about that. Thank you very much, Richard. Exciting times with COVID-19 for us. The next slide, which is number 11, basically shows what other mTOR inhibitors are doing commercially. As you can see that the sales of sirolimus and everolimus for Novartis are substantial. They're over $2 billion a year. And both of these products are mTOR inhibitors. Each is a slightly different, and ours is slightly different from theirs. And one of the key aspects is that these agents, as you can see, are potent immunosuppressive agents as they're used in organ transplant. Ours is not immunosuppressive, so we think we have an advantage there, because in cancer, you do not want to obliterate the immune system. You want to have a healthy immune system to try and recover from the cancer. Slide 12, please. It's just a summary of the market, and I'm going to skim through this, and you can look at this at your million dogs diagnosed with cancer annually in the US every year. We assume Vet Major is going to particularly focus on the US as they're US based. We expect that the US market will be around about 100 million a year. And one of the limiting factors with current therapies in cancer in dogs are the side effects of chemotherapy. And this basically pushes owners into having the dog put down. They don't want the dog to suffer under the influence of aggressive chemotherapy. Often this is second round and third round are avoided by owners. Furthermore, these days, many pet owners have insurance, so it's not unusual to be paying between $2,000 and $5,000 for a course of chemotherapy or anti-cancer treatment. And again, quite importantly for us is what has happened in the dog, we're hoping will happen in the human now. And you do not have to cure all cancers in humans to have a fantastic product. If you look at the whole array of products in cancer, achieving something like 8 to 12 weeks extended survival is a $1 billion product in the cancer arena. So next slide, please, is slide 13. Thank you for that. In summary, the canine trial has achieved a successful anti-cancer outcome as far as we're concerned, and we have a timetable for presenting this to vet majors. So we're looking forward to the outcomes end of June, beginning of July, to start getting some feedback from the vet partner. We've opened up the door for rekindling the human market and our program development for the human trials. And of course, we've got the COVID-19 discussions with the Walter Eliza Hall progressing. So again, in the interests of time and answering questions, I might ask Colin to talk to us about EpiChem, please.
Thank you, Roger. Good afternoon to all, and thanks for joining us on the call. So just with regards to EpiChem, we have serviced a number of different client verticals over the years, including pharmaceutical, mining, agriculture, animal health, to name a few. All the work is carried out in our 2 purpose-built state-of-the-art laboratories based in Technology Park in Perth. And we provide 4 major areas that we focus on. The biggest one for us is medicinal chemistry and drug discovery, where we look at, looking at hit-to-lead projects, lead optimization towards the appropriate candidate selection, what we call synthesis or custom synthesis of analog libraries, and then that allows the clients to scale up. IP generation, both in terms of accelerating commercialization for the clients as well as internally. Drug conjugates, fluorescent tags, and metabolites. And then we also provide what we call full-time equivalent, flexible contract options, or fee-for-service options as well. We also have 3 other divisions of the organisation: pharmaceutical reference standards, custom synthesis, and technical services. And we also have analytical service or problem-solving capability that rounds out the 4 divisions of EpiChem moving forward. In terms of our track record, we are ISO 9001 certified, and we're also accredited to the NATA standard of 17025 and 17034. For those of you that aren't familiar with those particular accreditations, 17034, EpiChem is one of 1 in Western Australia with that reference standard accreditation, and only 1 of 5 in Australia that actually produces and manufactures the pharmaceutical reference standards to that specific specification. We're the current 2019 WA Export of the Year for international health, and we've won that award on a number of years. And then more recently this year, we were awarded the GHP Biotechnology 2020 Awards for the most innovative chemistry service provider in Australia and the best in organic chemistry solutions. They're specific awards that the team are very proud of. In terms of the important role that we play for PharmAust as well, so as Roger alluded to before, being the commercial chemistry subsidiary of the organisation, we also provide support when it comes to lead drug development and validation, but both in terms of the drug candidate pipeline manufacture and analysis, drug reformulation, and as well as GMP synthesis and the stability support work that we undertake, and also drug inventory dispensing to the clinical trial centres. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share, Roger.
Thank you for that, Colin. Rather than go on to slides 15 and 16, I'd like the audience to review these at their leisure. They're basically the composition of the board of directors, is slide 15. And and slide 16 is the disclaimer. So can we proceed to questions now?
Yes, thanks for that, Roger, Richard and Colin. First question today, which I think you slightly touched on. Has the vet major phase 2 dog dossier been submitted, and what are the next milestones for an agreement, timing and outcomes?
I think I can make a start on that question, and Richard can correct me if I overstate. My understanding is that we'll have a first draft of the dossier by the end of June, and vet major will want to have that in hand before they interview both their own specialist oncologists, canine oncologists, as well as the vets from our side who undertook the clinical trial. So I think things will start to happen quickly in early July in terms of reviewing. Of course, vet major knows they're under some pressure to review quickly, because once the option clock is ticking, then they have a limited amount of time. I don't think they're going to sit on this for a long time. Is that about right, Richard?
I think that's pretty correct. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you. Next one, which we've had this question quite a bit. I know this is probably for you, Richard, and there are some privacy reasons with what you can and can't say. But constantly we've had how many dogs are on the maintenance program and what are their status? What's the longest period for a dog still on the program?
Okay, so they're very good questions, and we have to remember the primary reason for undertaking the trial is to look at anti-cancer activity of the dogs. And we have to set up a ethics committee, submit ethics applications and so forth. And it was a 28-day trial. So after the 28-day period, PharmAust really does not have access to the dogs. We offer ongoing Monepantel treatment after the 28-day period on compassionate use. And we're beholden to the vets and the pet owners to give us information. So for privacy reasons, we can't call them up and ask how their dogs are and ask for data. So it becomes a very unregulated scientific program, and it's only ever anecdotal. So we really rely on the 28-day data. And then for the longer term period, we would set up a new trial. But with that being said, of course, we have noted, and the vets have reported, one dog who was on the trial, well, who was receiving Monepantel after the trial for over 100 days. But that was in combination with prednisolone sometimes. So it's hard to attribute any activity specifically to Monepantel, but we know that the drug can be safely given to dogs with cancer for that long period of time. But yes, unfortunately, we cannot really comment on the specifics of dogs on longer term treatment because
okay,
it's very
that's fine. And just another question we have had a lot of, which is probably over to you again, Richard, in terms of the trends you saw
yes.
Throughout the trial. Why?
Sorry, you just broke up after why.
Why were so few dogs trialled? Was that something to do with the trends you saw?
Yeah, so it's actually a very good outcome if so few dogs were trialled, because it showed that the vets were able to reach a conclusion quite quickly. So on the back of a dog having an average of 60% reduction in average tumour burden, with one tumour completely disappearing, that's clear evidence that Monepantel is working. So with a phase 2 trial of this sort, the next step is to finish that, analyse the data, and then do a larger, fully controlled trial hopefully with a partner, and with this information to demonstrate how we're going to use the drug in the clinic.
Okay, thanks for that. Roger, what's the approach to reach the next areas of research such as human cancer?
Look, I think the investigators' brochure that we used some years ago for the trial, the human trial in Adelaide, will be brought up to modern standards, shall we say, by inclusion of the canine data and inclusion of all the reformulation and production of a palatable tablet. And we need to go out in the world now and talk to physicians with particular cancers. I mean, we know that MPL crosses the blood-brain barrier, so maybe brain or glioblastoma will be one. Pancreatic could be another. So cancers which are sensitive to modifications of mTOR, which we know all about from rapamycin and everolimus and sirolimus. So I think we've got a pathway set out now to push ahead with human studies. We've just got to pick the right cancers. That's the challenge.
Okay, thanks for that. Richard, just on the COVID trial, has the second follow-up trial on COVID been started at the Walter Eliza Hall Institute Research Centre?
Yes, in fact, it was completed on Monday, and I received the data yesterday, and I'm just finalising the data in discussions with the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute at the moment, but I can say it looks very good, and it seems to have repeated quite faithfully what we saw in the first set of experiments.
Okay, thanks for that. Colin, over at Epichem, what is happening in Epichem, and how is the new leadership providing direction for the next phase of revenue growth?
Thanks, Daniel. So we've identified and contracted some business development consultants in the US, Europe, and Asia. And as a result of that, we have a number of tenders that are out at the moment. One in particular, just to give the audience insight into size and scope, is 10,000 molecules in a 12-month period, with an estimated value to Epichem of about 4.5 million USD over a 5-year period if we were successful in that regard. So we're watching that one closely. We've also appointed 7 new distribution partners across the region. So these are people who work in terms of in the space of pharmaceutical reference standards, and they are then going to use the Epichem brand to actually promote the Epichem pharmaceutical reference standards in their respective markets and countries. We're just about to go live with an e-commerce platform on our website that allows people to buy and bag, as we say, so they can buy a lot of the catalogue or request custom synthesis products directly from our e-commerce platform from that point of view. And obviously there's been an opportunity for us to be intimately involved with the WA government on some COVID-19 initiatives, including a smart chemistry surface project to look at how do we COVID-19 and implement surface technology to protect us from viruses, both in terms of visualization. And then finally, I've also been asked by the Chief Scientific Officer in Western Australia, Professor Peter Klinken, to be involved in the life science and medical industry reference group as we look to create a hub for biotechnology support and investment here in Western Australia. We were fortunate enough to be able to produce some high quality hand sanitizer during the COVID period. And that's also been well received by stakeholders right throughout the market around contributing not only to the community, but also we donated some to both healthcare and aged care service providers in their time of need during that time. Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Colin. Next one for Roger or Richard. What IP has PharmAust secured with regards to COVID-19 regarding MPL?
Well, I can take that. We have filed a patent in advance of any publication or disclosure, essentially claiming the use of MPL and its many analogues that we have against COVID-19. And that filing has been lodged with the Australian Patent Office. And we have 12 months to embellish it further with information as we do additional research. So I think with patents, nothing's ever completely set in stone, but I think we have a good IP position to go out to the world and look towards one, human trials with MPL in COVID-19, but also talking to potential partners. And you have to understand that billions of dollars of research money are being spent on COVID-19, and here we're sitting with a molecule that looks good. I can't say more than that. I think there's some interesting times for PharmAust moving forward. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Richard.
No, I think that's correct. It looks very good for this very early stage, and we're hoping to keep moving ahead into the clinic if we can.
Okay, thanks for that. Colin, just back to you. Given what's going on with PharmAust at the moment, could Epichem act as an R&D project incubator for PharmAust?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, being a commercial chemistry provider and some of the work that we undertake at the moment, where we work in the space of R&D on a daily basis on behalf of clients, there's no reason why we couldn't.
Okay, thank you. Roger, just on what you've recently said, can you elaborate on the massive market looming for PharmAust to enter?
Yes, I can. And the market is the oncology market. That's the one we've been targeting. Let's put aside COVID for the moment. But the market for us is both the human and the veterinary markets. We've chosen to go for the veterinary market first, which is at least $500 million US a year, according to unpublished reports. And for us, going for this short-term market, because it's vet, and we've got good vet data in dogs, I think that's the sensible first option. But I think the human market is really where the real game will be played, because if it works in dogs, we're confident that we're going to get good results in humans. And provided we can pick the right cancer to begin with, entering the human market is a very different game. It's a 52+ billion US dollar market a year. And it's all about positioning. And if you're good at it, you get the right cancers to begin with and you set up the right trials. Or you could spend a lot of time doing the wrong trials. So we're investing a lot of efforts with the team to pick out what would be the best next steps in humans, and then identifying investigators who are running trials. And to give you an example, there are cancers which are devastating. The median survival can be weeks or just a few months, and often there isn't a treatment for them. So such trials would give a quick answer to the question of, do you improve survival? So I think that's where we're going, is dogs first, which we should know about in July, as to whether we're proceeding with vet major, and two, take our updated investigators brochure to clinicians running trials and seeing whether they're prepared to run a trial for us.
Okay, thanks for that. This one's an interesting one, and I've always wondered it myself. But whose dogs are in the images of the newly released presentation, and are they patients?
Some of them are patients, and some of them are directors' dogs.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm at liberty to say which is which is which. I think the Alsatian was a patient's dog.
This one's for Roger or Rich. Is there an intent to use MPL or MPLS with other drugs? And if so, how will that impact the road ahead?
Richard, do you want to do that one? Or sorry?
Yep. So with Monepantel as an anti-cancer drug, there's always scope to continue as a therapeutic by itself, but also with other drugs too. And we've been having preliminary talks to that effect with some of the veterinarians who were involved in this phase 2 trial. And they're quite excited to see how it might compare with standard of care directly and also in addition to standard of care. For any future application with COVID-19, if you think about the HIV antivirals, I think they use a cocktail of 4, because the one drug, remdesivir, which is the antiviral for COVID-19, was developed for Ebola virus. And as I said earlier, it reduces respiratory or time on the respiratory support by 3 days. So the idea is always to build a cocktail of drugs to offer a cure. So definitely for both indications.
Okay, thanks for that. Had this question quite a bit come through today and prior to the webinar. Maybe for Roger, can you fast track MPL as a COVID-19 treatment with all the safety data and tasteless tablet, like with resources like government funding?
I think the simple answer is yes. And we would be looking towards financial support from government, which would be, of course, non-dilutive in terms of grants and so on. But sure, we have an extensive dossier and we would need to get agreement from our partner, Vet Major, to use their MPL commercially in humans for COVID-19. And assuming we get that approval, which I think we would, for obvious reasons, we could push ahead fairly quickly into a human scenario. There really is very little at the moment once the patient enters intensive care, with mortality running at about 50%. Half of those who go into intensive care and onto a ventilator don't come out again. So there's a lot of pressure to try new drugs, which one, don't add to the toxicity of the virus, but two, also can potentially reduce what they call the cytokine storm that occurs in these patients and give you a better outcome.
Okay, and last one before we have to wrap it up. Roger, has there been any interest shown by Eli Lilly in MPL as a treatment in human cancer? Maybe
we have not
explain who Eli Lilly is.
Yes. Look, Eli Lilly was the owner of Vet Major, and they are in the COVID-19 area, and they are in oncology in a big way. And I think now that we're in a position to move on from the vet side, we would certainly be talking to Eli Lilly as well as numerous other large human pharmaceutical product companies.
Thank you. And just in conclusion, I just want to thank all participants of today's webinar. Following this, we are arranging one-on-one strategic and broker investor meetings over the next week to, I guess, get the story out there as much as we can. And yeah, exciting times ahead. So thanks to everyone, and thanks for the questions. I hope we answered as many as possible. Thanks to the panel.
And thanks to JP for organising.
That's all right. And this recording will be available online. So if anyone's joined late, we'll send a link out to all participants. Thank you.